Hello and thanks for joining me. This video is about motorcycle navigation and I'm going to talk about GPS systems. However, it's not going to be a review of a particular GPS system. Rather, what I want to talk about is the different types of riding that I do and the different types of navigation that go with those types of riding, and therefore the devices that I find work best in those situations. So I would classify the riding that I do into three main types. One is touring, particularly international touring, and for that type of riding, and that's on a road bike, I use this, which is my TomTom rider, which is an excellent device for road riding over long distances, long tours, off for 3, 4, 5 weeks touring. So I'll talk about that in more detail in a second. The second type of riding that I do is adventure riding, what you might call off-road riding. When I say off-road, I mean off tarmac. One of the problems with traditional GPS systems is they will not recognise routes that go off established roads. So if you're on trails, which may be perfectly legal trails, they just won't be recognised on the mapping systems of these GPS systems. So for that type of adventure riding, I use this, which is my Garmin Montana. This is one of the 600 series. These have been updated. There is now a 700 series, but I'm still using the 600 series. And I use that in the UK with an Ordnance Survey map, which I'll talk about in more detail in a minute. The third type of riding that I do is what I would call just, going out for a day's ride or a half-day ride locally, just out for a spin on local roads that I know fairly well. I'm just going out for a bit of fun. And what I found with that kind of riding, I don't need a full-on GPS system like the TomTom rider. However, I might have a specific destination, and maybe even a specific destination I've not been to before, so I want some kind of navigation to get me there. And what I found works really well for that is this little device, which is the Beeline Moto SatNav system. And this works particularly well when I'm riding my classic British bikes, because it's small, it's inobtrusive, it just fastens on your handlebars with a couple of elastic bands. It doesn't need wiring into the electrics to be powered, and I just find that it's, finding at the moment, I'm a fairly recent convert. I've only been using it since the summer, so I've only had it a couple of months, but I'm finding this is absolutely perfect for that local riding. So just to reiterate, what I would suggest is there are three types of riding, certainly that I do. There's the longer distance, longer term touring, for which I use what you would call a traditional GPS system, and I'll talk about that more in a second. Then there's the adventure riding, or off-road riding, for which I then use a sort of Ordnance Survey map navigation system. And then thirdly, there's local riding, where I don't need such a high level of navigation instructions, and a slightly more low-key, inobtrusive system like this Beeline works better. So in general terms, why are you using a GPS device at all? Well, really for a couple of reasons. One is that you may have a specific destination that you're wanting to get to, and they are excellent for guiding you to that, right to that destination. Or the other thing that you may be using it for is you have a specific route. So you may have put together a beautiful route to ride, either a day ride or part of a tour, and you want to make sure that you stick to that route, and don't end up on the motorway or highway or something like that where it's less attractive riding. And they are excellent for both of those types of navigation. Now, a lot of people of my age, my generation, still don't use electronic GPS devices because they do things old school, and I have to admit that I toured for many years without the use of an electronic GPS, and very successfully. I just used a map and directions, and I still do that. So I have here, just kind of brought with me to show you. This is a little waterproof bag with magnets on the back that just sits on the tank, and inside it I just put handwritten notes of where I'm going. So it's actually got some handwritten notes for a tour I did down through France, Holland and Belgium. This will be just before the COVID lockdown, actually, I did this ride. So even though I was using an electronic GPS device, I still had this because I like to, know where I'm going. So I'll have a look at the map, I'll make notes of key towns or junctions, put distances in there, and then I can just glance at this and know where I'm going. And you can navigate quite successfully using this. Another thing that I want to address is, some people say, well, why don't you just use your phone? The phone will do all the things that you are talking about. And yeah, I have done. In actual fact, I've got here, this is an old phone now, but I kept this just for navigation. And this is a waterproof case that mounts on my handlebars. Put it inside there. I actually got a case that's slightly deeper, so I can put an extra power pack behind the phone and power it in so that the battery lasts much longer. And of course, there's a whole range of different navigation systems that you can use on a phone. So that's definitely a possibility, and I have used that. But what I just found that GPS systems are dedicated to do one thing, and generally they do them well. And also there's other factors such as them being more rugged and robust. And I don't like the idea of putting my phone in a relatively vulnerable position on the bike where it might get damaged. I've been out, particularly adventure riding, lots of friends who've either lost or damaged their phones when they're out riding. But also I prefer to have my phone on my person. So if some kind of mishap happens to me and I come off and I'm, parted from my bike, say my bike goes down a ravine or something like that, I've got my phone on me. It's not on the bike, which is several hundred yards away from me and inaccessible. But that's just me. I will admit you can navigate very well with a phone, and as I say, I have used this system, waterproof case, extra battery pack behind it, or of course you can plug the phone into a power charger, USB on the bike, and that does work fine. But I use these GPS systems. So let's have a look at each one in a little bit more detail. So I'll start by talking a little bit more about the Garmin Montana here. This is not supposed to be a detailed review of the device, so I'm not going to start showing you how you use it, or I probably won't even bother switching it on. I just want to talk in principle about it. If you want to know more about them, then go and find another more detailed review. Maybe I'll do some myself later. But the point of this video is just talking in principle about navigation. So what I like about this Garmin Montana is, first of all, it's extremely rugged and waterproof. It mounts on the bike very securely. On my KTM, I've got a mount which you can actually lock the device onto, so it's not coming off. It powered into the bike as well, so I've got mine wired in so that it's constantly being charged from the bike. However, even if you're not doing that, it has a very long battery life as this. And one of the great things about these, because they're designed for as walking as well as vehicle GPSs, you can take the back off there. There's the battery, but you can probably see from the terminals there, put that closer, you can replace the battery with some ordinary AA batteries. It takes 3 AA batteries. So if you were out and about and you ran out of charge, then you just need to find a shop somewhere like that where you can buy some ordinary AA batteries, which are widely available, and you can keep powering it. The other thing which I love about this system is I can use, in the UK, I can use the Ordnance Survey maps, which are the best maps for navigating around off-road. They're very, very detailed. I don't think there's anything quite comparable in any other country. I mean, I've used this in America using various other mapping systems, and they work, but there's nothing quite like the UK Ordnance Survey system. So it's great being able to put these other types of mapping systems on here and then just follow them. So the way I do this is I use Basecamp. I create my routes in Garmin Basecamp. Now I know that Basecamp is a bit Marmite, but some people hate it, other people love it. I'm in the loving camp. What I will say about Basecamp is this: it is not intuitive. It's quite difficult to learn how to use it. However, once you have mastered it, and you've just got to put in the time to learn how to use it, there's plenty of great tutorial videos on YouTube. I put in a lot of time learning how to use Basecamp, and I'm glad I did, because it is extremely powerful. I find as a computer or laptop based route planning system, nothing touches it, and I use several other systems. None of them are as powerful or as flexible as Basecamp. Both in the terms of what you can do with routes, but also in terms of just the way you can organize and store routes, once you've created them. So I'm a great lover of Basecamp, and of course, because Basecamp is produced by Garmin, it works perfectly with this. So I can plan all my routes on my PC. I've got a big 30-inch high 4K screen, so I can use that with the Ordnance Survey maps mounted on my computer, and then I simply transfer them onto the Montana when I'm going out riding. There are some disadvantages to this system as well, though, so let me talk about the disadvantages. So the first disadvantage, I would say, is the complexity. Both the complexity of using the Garmin Montana and the complexity of using Basecamp. I've already said that Basecamp is quite difficult to get your head around. It's not as intuitive as other planning systems, and because the Montana here is designed for a wide range of uses, for walking as well as off-road vehicles, for sailing, things like that, orienteering, treasure hunting, it's got menu after menu after menu, and the way you can set things up and change what you see on the screen, the display, the layout, the information, it's really quite complex. And as with Basecamp, you've got to invest quite a lot of time in learning how to use it and learning how to set it up in a way that works best for you. And I will admit, when I got this at first, I've now been using this for many years, but when I got this at first, I really struggled. I nearly abandoned it after the first few weeks because I just could not get it to do what I wanted to do. However, now I've mastered it, I love it. So it's worth persisting and sticking with them. Other disadvantages of this device in use: it has a relatively small screen compared to more modern devices. The screen is not as good as more modern devices, and the refresh rate on it is appallingly slow. The way it works with Ordnance Survey maps is it displays them as tiles, so the tile pictures, and as you move around tiles or you move between tiles, it takes a long time to refresh. Now when you're riding along, that's not so much of a problem because it's just changing gradually and it will update. But if you stop and you're wanting to have a look around you and see what's off a different route and what have you, and you're just sort of scrolling around on the screen, it's frustratingly slow to update, and that is my biggest frustration with the system. Also, I find it very difficult to plan and make routes directly on the Montana. I find I really have to create them on my PC and then load them on here. Another disadvantage I find is that it's not very good in traditional 3D on-road mode. You can switch between modes. So I've got this set up so you basically create different user profiles. So I've got one user profile for my off-road riding, in which I have it in two-dimensional view looking at the Ordnance Survey map, and then I have another user profile for road riding, which goes back to a more traditional kind of view where it's the 3D and it gives you directions and instructions as you are riding along. That is not brilliant. For example, if you're navigating places, it's not very good at postcodes. So if you're trying to find somewhere, you look at the postcode of where you're wanting to go. It won't accept full postcodes. You need to know the name of the road as well. It's very frustrating. So what I find is the way I use it is I tend to have key places that I know that I might need to go to visit quite frequently. I have them put in here as places, as locations, and then I just tell it to navigate to that location that I've got saved. But there's no way that I would use this as a regular on-road, traditional GPS system. It would just drive me mad with frustration. Now this is a 600 series, so it is quite old, and I guess it's out of date because Garmin released the 700 series of the Montana, and that's been out for quite a few years now. I've not updated for a couple of reasons. The main one is the cost. These things are just ridiculously expensive. The new 700 series Montana, I think they're about £600-700 in the UK, so $600-700. You've got to buy your mounts. On top of that, you've got to buy your mapping system. In the UK, the Ordnance Survey map, which comes on a little memory chip, is about £150 or $150. So, you know, by the time you've bought the system, you've bought the mount, you've bought your maps, you are looking at, you know, £800-900. That's a huge investment. So whilst this thing is still functioning, even though it's slightly frustrating in some of its functionality, I will not be upgrading just yet. I'm always looking for upgrade options. I think we're all looking for that unicorn GPS system, aren't we? Ideally, I would like one that does everything. And it doesn't cost the earth. You know, motorcycle GPS systems are just so much more expensive than car-based ones. Okay, so let's talk about the Beeline Moto, which is the latest one, which I bought just this summer. What do I like about this? Well, it's small, it's discreet, it's very easy to transfer between bikes. So I use this on my classic British bikes when I'm going out riding locally. There's a little mount which just fastens on your handlebars or anywhere else you want to fasten it with a couple of rubber bands. It's very secure once it's on. This thing has a very, very long battery life. I think the battery lasts 40 hours or something like that on it. So you don't need to worry about plugging it in to charge. And you know, in that respect, it's a very low-key navigation system, and I love that. And I've already talked about the way that it's perfect for when I'm just going out for day rides. Say, for example, I'm heading out to a specific cafe or to meet some friends somewhere, and I've got a couple of hours before I need to get there. I'll just head off and explore, and I've always got this thing, and you know, I just keep glancing at it and following the directions until I eventually get to where I want to go. And you know, one of the things that I'm really loving about using it is that I find that I'm just spending less time looking at a screen with a map on it where I'm going. I'm just spending far more time actually looking at where I'm going, enjoying the scenery, reading the road ahead, reading the road signs, navigating, you know, in the old school, you know, true sense of finding my way around. One of the huge disadvantages, I think, of modern GPS systems is people just seem to have their head in the GPS with no real sense of where they're going. Had a very funny conversation with the daughter of a friend a while back, and she'd been on a journey. I can't remember where it was, but she'd done like a 300-mile journey, and she had absolutely no idea where she had been. So she'd been to a specific town, but she had no idea where it was, i.e., you know, whether it was north, south, east, west of where she lived, what county it was in, nothing, because she'd just been following the directions on the GPS, you know. And she's not stupid, it's just that's what using a modern GPS does to you. You're far less aware of your surroundings, where you are, you know, where you're going. So yeah, it's one of the things I'm really loving about using this. As I say, I'm fairly new to it, so I guess I'm still in the honeymoon period with it. So, you know, if I have any further thoughts or feelings about this Beeline Moto, I will, you know, put them in a later video. And finally then, I want to talk about what you might call the sort of more traditional GPS systems. This is the one I currently use, which is my TomTom Rider 2, latest version of the TomTom. That's my Zumo. That's not the latest Zumo, because I updated that one with the TomTom. But you know, the latest Garmin Zumo is an excellent device. What I have to say about these Garmin and TomTom, I find this very frustrating, this point, and that is there are some excellent features on the TomTom that aren't on the Zumo, and I wish they're on the Zumo, and the other way around. So the Zumo does some things which the TomTom doesn't do, and it is so frustrating. I feel like I would like to sort of bang the heads of the two companies together and say, look, can you just look at what the competition are doing and incorporate all of those good features in them? So I'm not going to make this into a detailed review of the TomTom, but some of the things I like about it is it's very, very easy to use. The navigation on it is excellent. So when you're navigating, I very, very rarely, I'm not sure where I'm going. The TomTom, if you're familiar with them, have this side panel with like a timeline, if you like, or a route line, and that's got excellent information on it, things coming up, and you can program what you want to put on there. I have fuel stops, so again, when I'm touring, that's a great thing, because you can always tells you then how far it is to the next fuel station that's on your route. Obviously you can deviate off the route to find a fuel station, and it'll tell you where they are, but it just tells you when fuel stops are coming up along the route. With all of these modern ones, you can link them in via your phone, so that you can get up-to-date traffic information and things like that on them as well. So they're very useful. They all wire into your system if you've got an intercom system, so you can get spoken directions in your ear. I don't like that. I tend to just read the device. I don't have the spoken directions, but sometimes that can be extremely useful. I just want to mention a couple of points that I find particularly frustrating about this TomTom. I feel that there's been some sort of loss of some excellent features when they updated to this version. And one is that, well, certainly I've not found a way. If you have, please tell me in the comments. But you can't actually custom label waypoints. So one thing I used to do with my Garmin Zumo, and you could do it with my old TomTom as well, is if I planned a route and I say I had a coffee stop, and I put that on as a waypoint, or I had the lunch stop, I would just put them in as that. So I put lunch stop, and then you would see it coming up on your timeline, and you could see that, it was like 20 miles to lunch stop. Now it's just a waypoint, and I can't call it lunch stop. So I can see there's a waypoint coming up in 20 miles, but I'm not aware that it's my lunch stop until I get there, and then I recognise, well, that's where I wanted to stop for lunch. It's such a simple and easy thing. I find it so frustrating. There are a number of other features that the Garmin Zumo is much better at than the TomTom. I'm not going to go into all of the details, because this is not supposed to be a comparative review between the two. But on balance at the moment, because I have both, on balance at the moment, I'm finding the TomTom is my favourite, and I'm using that. But yeah, it would be nice if it had some of the functionality of the Zumo as well. Maybe when I replace this, I'll get a Zumo, we'll see. So I hope you found that interesting, looking at these different ways of navigating and the different systems that work well for them. I'm always on the lookout for something better, and so whenever some new device comes out, I have a look at it. The problem is that the price of these devices is just prohibitive. So I have been looking at some alternatives. The Garmin Zumo XT looks to me to be just about the best system out there at the moment, but you've still got this problem that you can't load UK Ordnance Survey maps on it, which they're so important for me for navigating with my adventure riding. I've already mentioned the Garmin Montana 700 series, which you can use with the Ordnance Survey maps, but the cost of that is prohibitive. I was having another system recently, but this is not actually a new system. I just made a note of it. It's the Garmin GPS Map 276CX. You might be familiar with that. So that's a system. It's got a nice big. It's quite a big, chunky device actually. And it's got buttons separate to, it's not just touchscreen, it's got separate buttons, but it's been around for quite a few years, and I just feel, and it's still about £650 in the UK. And I feel because it's been around for quite a few years, it's due an update. So I'm always just waiting and looking to find that perfect device. For me, the perfect device is one that has all the great functionality of a road-going GPS, like for any road-going vehicle, but also has the facility to use off-road maps and to navigate with tracks, what Garmin called tracks rather than routes. So if you have found your unicorn GPS device, please tell me about it. Let me know in the comments to this video, and I'll check it out, because yeah, I'm just talking about the devices which I currently use that work for me, but always looking for better options within the constraints of costs, of course. Thanks very much for watching. I hope that wasn't too much of a rambling video, and hopefully see you all again soon. Ride safe. Bye bye.